Hey y'all, and welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures, and home of the mystery box. And today, we are going to check out a box filled with figures of the Flying Falcon. Falcon has a new movie coming out with Captain America: Brave New World, but this is a chance to really delve into the character's history, get a sense of where he came from, and why he has become such an integral part of not only the Marvel Comics universe, but the MCU universe as well. And he's really a terrific character, and I'm picking up the very first Falcon action figure here. This is the Mego World's Greatest Superheroes Falcon. Now, I picked up my Mego collection back when I was in school, and it was the early days of eBay, and I was broke. And so you can see, look, my Falcon has broken shoulders on both sides. He's missing his spectacular boots, and he's got a lot of paint rubs. So this is one that really needs to be replaced. But there's a lot of good to this figure too, and kind of going into a little bit of the history of the Falcon as a character. He made his first appearance in Captain America issue 117, all the way back in September of 1969, written by Stan the Man Lee and drawn by Gene Colan. And at the time, that made him only the second black superhero in Marvel Comics. The first was the Black Panther. So that actually made the Falcon the first African-American superhero in comics, which is pretty cool, and he has certainly stood the test of time. In fact, man, we really need an action figure of that first suit. How great does that, like, green and red look together? But Falcon has kind of always, kind of gotten, short shrift when it comes to being a superhero. And you can get some of that with this Mego figure. Now, Megos used basically the same body they had type 1 and type 2 bodies. They had a little bit of a more muscular body with type 2. And then they had a second body that was like what the Hulk had, and then a squat body that like Penguin and Mr. Mxyzptlk had. But basically all of your heroes were on the same, general type 2 frame. So they all kind of fit. Falcon obviously had a darker skin color, but Mego, like every toy company, was all about saving money. They would reuse parts whenever they could. And prior to the Falcon's release, they had had a successful toy line with Planet of the Apes. And so, in order to save money, they just reused Planet of the Apes hands on Falcon. So, because they were already cast in a darker plastic, the Falcon has furry monkey paws. And that is not meant to be like a totally racist thing. It just was a cost-cutting mechanism. But good grief, man, how terrible is it that your Falcon action figure has furry ape hands? That is a bad look, no matter how you take it. And, Mego didn't exactly do themselves any favors with the way that they marketed this action figure.
The Falcon, that great black superhero.
Yeah, that might have flown in the 1970s, but probably not going to work right now. But he was in the line. He actually did have a really great head sculpt, very unique. I'm sorry that mine has some paint wash there, and I wish I had the boots, but he has his wings right here. They look really nice, and if his shoulders weren't broken, this would be a great figure. But Falcon is a figure that has popped up in numerous Marvel lines across time. As a matter of fact, if we go to really the next major line of Marvel superheroes, the Mattel Secret Wars figures, Falcon was in the second series. And, this is another series that was not afraid to kind of cut cost and reuse bodies, but the Falcon actually came with his wings. Not very many characters got accessories in this line, but Falcon did get his wings. And it's a really good look at his classic 70s and 80s costume. He's got the open chest. He has kind of the Falcon wings coming over his shoulders. But this one you can see he's got sort of the tasseled boots and then that bird's claw look on the feet. And we'll see that on numerous figures as we go through. But when you talk about a line like Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars, which just didn't have that many characters in it, having a Falcon is pretty impressive. And it's a really good looking figure too. So that's definitely a win. Probably the next figure of the Falcon was this one. I see it down here. This is from Toy Biz's 5-inch series. So this was a Marvel Gold Falcon. I think the Marvel Gold line was only sold at KB stores. They basically took bodies of other figures and repainted them. But this Falcon, the repaint looks really good. Again, they did a great job with the classic costume, with the open chest, with the details, with the talons on his feet. That looks really great. And that Marvel 5-inch line mostly was like 7, 9 points of articulation. But this Falcon has ball shoulders and ball hips, which is pretty cool. And this mechanism for his wings actually works out pretty good. I think this actually looks pretty great. This may be one of the better figures in the Marvel 5-inch line. Now, Falcon he obviously first appeared in Captain America's book, but he quickly gained Steve Rogers' trust and became a very trusted ally of Steve Rogers, not just of him as Captain America, but he became not his sidekick, but his actual partner. The two actually shared title billing on Captain America's title from 1971 to 1978. So I think it's important to note that the Falcon wasn't simply Cap's sidekick. He was his partner in every way. And it's that same kind of steadfastness and loyalty, but also independence that has made Falcon such a cool character. And one of the coolest Falcons in my collection is this Famous Covers Falcon from the late 90s. Now, the Famous Covers line were 9-inch cloth costumed figures that were meant to replicate Mego's figures of the 1970s. In fact, they were supposed to be 8 inches, but a factory screw-up had them at 9. But you can see on this figure just how much love and detail went into them. Dedicated facial sculpt with this really great, he's got his Falcon mask there. Again, those classic design elements, the open chest, the Falcon wings. His wings have a really cool, just simple mechanism so that you can get these shoulders all the way out. And these figures were really well articulated, particularly for the day. One of the things that I particularly love about this figure is you come down and you actually get the tasseled boots with that sculpted claw on there. Famous Covers, much like Mego, were all about reusing parts, but Falcon got new wings, new tassels, new boots. He really is kind of a special character. And I think because of the fact that he did appear in the original Mego line, and then he did appear in the Marvel Superheroes line, that was probably one of the reasons why Falcon was included in the Famous Covers line. So there's a little bit of a nod to the past with this. Now, as we move toward our era of superposable 6-inch figures with Marvel Legends, that's when we start to see some really incredible Falcon figures. And here we go. Oh no, that's right. I actually have 2 of these. This is my first Marvel Legends Falcon, and that one's obviously broken. Let's see. I think I see the other one in here. Yeah, here it is. So this is the first Marvel Legends Falcon from Toy Biz. And I have had this figure in my display for a long time, mostly because this is truly the only Falcon in his classic costume that we've gotten in 6-inch scale. And it really is pretty classic. We've already kind of gone over the different aspects of his outfit. You can see, even though it's sculpted in plastic, you get the tasseled look here with the claws, you get the wings. One thing that I noticed that Toy Biz did, the wings were mechanical. Even though they look to be organic and they have that sculpted wing pattern on here, these are mechanical wings that I think Black Panther actually helped the Falcon. He originally had some wings that he could glide with, but the ones that actually allow him to fly came from Black Panther and Wakandan technology, and you can see some of that. You can see some of the mechanics in this Toy Biz figure. Now, Toy Biz was very much experimenting with articulation, and this is the one that has the really huge, really kind of obnoxious ball shoulders. I mean, those are distracting and kind of bad, but this kind of bicep upcut does allow you to get his wings up into a great position. But if we're going to talk about the good of Toy Biz figures, we've got to also talk about the bad. Because when you lift up the Falcon's neck, which you're going to do to have him in flying poses, you can see that they didn't bother to color the neck articulation piece with a darker skin tone. They just left it as the plastic. And I mean, that is as bad as a monkey paw. I mean, that is just disrespectful. Can you imagine a Spider-Man figure that had like a dark neck joint? Absolutely not. You can't imagine that. So I'm sure I'm going to say that it wasn't purposeful, that again, it's all about cost cutting, and you have to paint the plastic, instead of remolding plastic, and they just used a red plastic piece. But for a character who has the history and the significance of Falcon, giving him this red plastic neck, not cool, man. That is absolutely not cool. Now, what was kind of cool was that Toy Biz often had variants in their line. And the Falcon was one of the variants in the Toy Biz line. And so here we have his second costume. I think this one premiered maybe with his miniseries. He had a miniseries in 1983. That may not be correct. It may have been a little bit later. But you can see it's a more modern look, more red. The open chest is gone. He's got a little bit of costume up over his shoulders. And with this one, unlike just being just a completely straight repaint, they actually did change the wings. You can see that the wings, particularly these distal wings on the original Toy Biz Falcon, were really short, whereas these are significantly longer. I mean, it makes for really a dynamic display and a really, really cool figure. They cheaped out on the neck. Now, somehow this one doesn't bother me as bad because you can kind of imagine that at least it's a part of the costume as opposed to the first one where it clearly is red instead of skin tone. But from the Toy Biz variants, this is actually a pretty cool figure. Falcon in the comics had a really incredible run. He was a member of the Avengers in the late 70s up until 1980. This is my Marvel Universe Falcon. It's kind of a combination of his original suit and the new suit. I'm obviously missing the arm. I've got some parts in here, including his wings. My kids played with these, so when I kind of got my collection back together, I did everything I could to find all the parts, but there's still some that are, I'm in process. Falcon is one of them. When the Falcon was a member of the Avengers, and this is actually, it's a good segue, this is the Falcon from the Avengers United We Stand cartoon, and these are underrated figures from 1999. That United We Stand cartoon wasn't great, but it produced some of the better 5-inch figures of the day, and this is definitely one of them. But Falcon's first stint with the Avengers was relatively short. He was only on the team from issue 183 to issue 194, and this was when the government was really kind of dictating the membership of the Avengers, and they were using the government liaison Henry Gyrich to really kind of control that. Falcon learned that he was actually placed on the team to fill a quota. And look, we're not getting into a DEI discussion right now, but when Falcon learned that he was basically just the token black character on the Avengers, he immediately quit. Now, he has gone on to become a valued member of the Avengers later in the comic series, and even the leader of the Avengers, but his first stint was a relatively short one. Now, I want to talk about this figure because I freaking love this thing. This is the only time that the Falcon looked like this in this cartoon. And kind of these boots, these sort of mech anime boots, were sort of the style of the cartoon. But they took some other liberties, adding the silver, taking away kind of the mask over the eyes, but keeping that gold piece right there on his head. But what I love about this is the shoulder overlay that creates the look of a falcon coming down. It's like it's the falcon with the falcon's nose and its eyes right there, and it seamlessly integrates into the look of the character. Oh, it's just so good. And again, this was a time when you weren't getting ball joints on a lot of figures, and this guy had ball hips. He actually had some ankle articulation. There is a ton of play value with this one, and I hate it. I didn't find the giant red wing that came with this figure, but another cool thing, these are magnets on his gauntlets. There's little magnet pieces where his red wing accessory could rest on his arm. So this is a super underrated Falcon figure, but one I definitely wanted to talk about. Now, Falcon has gone on in the comics to have a couple of other looks. This is, again, sort of that second look. We saw that with the Marvel Universe figure. It still has sort of the same design here, but it took away the open chest. I love these huge wings that this one had, and this is the figure that I actually have currently in my Avengers display. Until we get a true classic Falcon, this is the closest that we have. This one came on one of the retro card backs and is actually a really great figure. I took the Red Wing that actually came with the original Toy Biz Falcon back in the early 2000s. Thankfully, this guy had a peg in his back, and so I have him on display with Red Wing right over his shoulder. Now let's talk a little bit about Red Wing. Falcon's origin, his original origin, was that he was a social worker who grew up in Harlem and actually like raised birds, raised pigeons, had like a connection with them, and then he went down to this island because of the Red Skull, and he helped the locals of the island kind of form a revolt against the Red Skull's people. Now, because Falcon has always been kind of a B-list character, his history has gotten messed with over time. He's been retconned into like Snap Wilson, a drug mobster, but then it's been fixed back so that he is Sam Wilson from Harlem, a social worker with an affinity for birds. There was a time period where he was considered a mutant. There was another time period where he not only could kind of emphatically like talk to Red Wing, but he had like the power to like see through all birds' eyes. Like, so he could look through like the eyes of like 50,000 birds in New York City. Most of that stuff has now been kind of calmed down, but there have been some interesting tales over the course of Falcon's history. But this is his kind of neo modern suit. I think it's really good. And then Legends did give us, and I think this was in the Joe Fixit wave, the more modern Falcon. And he's got some wings down there. I need to get those on him. But this one has the gold gauntlets and a more modern costume. I do like the flying hands on this one. Same body, same kind of general body, but pretty cool. Falcon, of course, has been a real mainstay in the MCU. And Anthony Mackie, I think, has done a tremendous job of bringing the character integrity and loyalty. And I keep coming back to the fact that he's not Captain America's sidekick. He is his partner. And Captain America, Steve Rogers, to me, he's the moral compass of the Marvel Universe. Spider-Man is the heart and soul, but Steve Rogers is the moral compass. And the fact that he trusts the Falcon with his life means a lot to me. Now, this is the Diamond Select version. So this is a 7-inch figure. This is the only one I think I have from not Winter Soldier. Yeah, I think it is Winter Soldier. So this would have been the first appearance of the Falcon. I thought they did a decent job of kind of explaining how this tech, worked in a military way. You can see he actually has his fatigues on. Pretty sweet figure. He advanced, I think, yeah. This should be the Endgame one. And the wings just kind of snap right on. So the Infinity War, the wings just snap right on, like I say, piece of cake, right? And then, of course, it pegs directly into his back. Big spread, like really, really good looking, and a really great facial sculpt, kind of pre-inkjet technology, a really good looking Anthony Mackie sculpt. But this is our Endgame Falcon. I actually have the Hot Toys version up in my Hot Toys display, looking really cool. That's a great figure. But this is a pretty good one in the 6-inch scale. And then we're going to get into some of the more MCU stuff and kind of the emergence as Falcon, as Captain America. Before we do that, I do have one more, one of my absolute favorite toy lines, and that's the Marvel's Legends Retro 3 and 3/7-inch figures. Now, if you've watched the channel for a while, you know how much I love these, how I think that these are some of the best, bang for your buck. The card art is great. And look at how much detail they got into this classic Falcon, including giving him a red wing. So sure, he's got his wings that flap out, not unlike the Secret Wars figure. In fact, I've made a lot of comparisons between these Marvel Legends retro figures and the Mattel 1984 Secret Wars figures. Great detail. Even though the plastic isn't really tasseled out, you get the feel of the tassels. And of course, he's got his bird claws down there. Just a great, simple action figure and one that you can fit into your pocket. I love it. Now, in 2015, the comic storyline had Steve Rogers becoming old, losing the effects of his super soldier serum, say that 3 times fast, and basically becoming a 90-year-old man. This, I think, is the MCU version of Falcon as Captain America. I want to say this is from the Falcon and Winter Soldier MCU Disney Plus series, because it does have a pretty accurate Anthony Mackie head sculpt. But in the comics, the costume was almost exactly the same. You know, you can see the incorporation of the wings. It's Captain America's suit, essentially. But you get the wings in here, and of course, you get the harness for his flying wings. And I've got them right here. So this is another, this may be, that's another MCU version, because that really does look like Anthony Mackie. I think that these are the wings that fit onto this guy. Pegs right in here. Really cool. You know, he kind of went red, white, and blue with his wings on this. Just really, it's a great design because it honors both the Falcon and Captain America. I think, here we go. Here's the version that I really want to see. This is the comic version of that. And so I've got all the stuff in here. He comes with his backpack, which is right here. And it pegs in, and then it has the attachments for the wings to just clip on. So this actually is going to fit in really nicely. And that's articulated up and down, so you can get that moving. But then it allows you to clip these wings in really well. I always like the comic versions more than the MCU versions. You guys know that comics history is what we're all about around here. And this, even though they really, out of all the MCU outfits, they probably changed Falcon as Captain America the least. Now, there was a period of time when both Cap and Falcon were operating under the name of Captain America. And during that time, Falcon had a slightly different shield. Steve was using his shield, and I want to say Misty Knight made a new one for the Falcon, and so he painted it like this. So it's a little bit different, but what a great looking figure. Big, huge, red wingspan, articulated. You can get him to kind of come down. You know, he's been able to use the wings as like a protective measure as well as an offensive measure, as well as for just like super cool flying. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this kind of dig into the history of one of Marvel's oldest characters. You know, the Falcon's been around for he's been around for over 50 years now. And he's an important part of the Marvel Universe. So if it's comics history and action figures that you enjoy, give the video a like and subscribe to Carbon Scoring, because we are bringing you videos like this every week.